Hello, everyone. I'm Sudeep Charles, and I head product marketing for Chef SaaS. With me today is Mark, who also leads the product management for this product. And we'll talk on how you can manage your infra deployments from the cloud via SaaS, right? And we'll see how this paradigm can be orchestrated with Chef SaaS, and of course, the benefits that you can derive with this approach. While we also get into some detail of what you can expect from such an offering, right? So with that said, let's get to it. Well, in general, the trend that we're seeing today is in terms of DevOps being adopted really quickly through a SaaS based model, right? And that's kind of evolved from cloud native as well. So this isn't new to anyone on this call. And the adoption of DevOps via SaaS is relatively high if you look at it, and there are multiple indicators. So 70%, I think, of CISOs are looking for ways to manage their development activity in a more agile oriented and a product oriented way. That boosts their scalability and agility as well, right? And the SaaS model really helps with both those objectives. Forrester, of course, believes that 40% enterprises are increasingly focusing on delivering location agnostic device management capabilities. Why is this important? Because on-prem, hey, let me take your desktop, or let me kind of go and configure your server, is a little difficult given the distributed environments that exist today. Of course, there are other reports. Bain & Co., for example, indicates that compliance cost for organizations on an average worldwide is about 5.47 million. And that goes up 6x in the case of financial sectors, which are about 30.9 million as an average compliance cost, right? But if you think that's high, well, the cost of non-compliance is 30% on the higher side of those numbers, right? So how do you maintain compliance across a distributed infra using SaaS? Something we'll talk about in a bit. And yet SaaS adoption in healthcare, and if you thought that compliance is going to be a challenge, hey, where are these guys going to store their data? Is it safe? Well, healthcare is a tightly regulated industry, and if you look at SaaS adoption in healthcare, that's growing at a steady clip of 20% YOY. Right? So something to consider about. And while we talk a lot about these numbers, it's not just our view of the world, right? And senior execs from Gartner, for example, Enrique Chicky from Gartner, believes that infrastructure is becoming programmable and its operations is subsequently becoming automated as well, right? So that's validation from third-party analysts and leading analysts at that. Well, there are multiple challenges in deploying your cloud and deploying your infra. And I'll speak very briefly to this. This is almost like me preaching to the choir, so I won't spend too much time on it. But essentially, provisioning at the get-go. When you have multiple cloud providers, you could probably use tools that they provide on their platforms, but then you're not going to be able to replicate this across multiple cloud providers, right? And that defeats the purpose of trying to do this, because you're trying to optimize the way you deploy and maintain your infrastructure, the way you're going to be able to monitor its functioning and see if it's compliant, right? If you're going to have to you got to do this separately for each cloud provider, and then going to have to make exceptions for each of these depending on the kind of provider, that's not quite serving the purpose. The same goes for application deployment too, right? You have multiple clouds. Deploying applications across clouds is not really easy. So if you can actually choose a solution that abstracts workloads from the clouds that host them, and then be completely consistent in your deployment process across these multiple clouds, I think that's the grail, the holy grail to really look at, right? And of course, I spoke a lot about compliance, so I won't touch upon that again. But one last thing is, all this is great. Monitoring of these deployments across different providers also is easier using a SaaS-based offering as opposed to just doing it on-prem. Now, does it make sense? Well, there are obvious, pros and cons to this, right? So one is if you're doing an on-prem approach, of course, the infra is going to cost a lot. There's going to be a backup cost, and of course, there's going to be a maintenance cost. All of that are kind of easily circumvented, if you will, from a SaaS offering. So the cost of adoption, the risk of adoption, both of them are minimized. You're hiving off a lot of the maintenance to someone else to take care of, and also making sure that there is a level of compliance while you do that, right? So there are, of course, pros and cons, but these are the broad strokes of typically any SaaS deployment. But how does that relate to what we do from a DevOps perspective, right? I'll just talk through, and you can see the numbers on the screen, so I'll let you peruse through that. But essentially, the commentary here is, there have been several, when you're deploying your infra, you might have multiple admins for just your app servers, different kinds of or different parts of your infrastructure. And typically, the kind of knowledge that these admins have is typically tribal. And when people leave, that knowledge goes with them, right? Why is that important? Simply because of the fact that we've also seen the great resignation that's come upon us over the last 18 months, right? And it's not abating. So if you look at it, nearly 48 million Americans quit their jobs the last year. And of that, 4.9 mil did that just in January alone, right? So, and all of this is having an impact on the way we are able to deploy and manage infrastructure, especially for very small IT and DevOps teams, right? So although it might, and this people coming in and leaving the org has its own issues, right? It's easy to provision and deprovision, but maintaining record of how you do this is becoming a challenge. So although it might appear like there is a simple disconnect between departing employees and onboarded employees, the SaaS based environments in being able to do all of this is making both the onboarding and the offboarding really easy to do, right? And that's something that saves time across and cost across the value chain, and that's basically the numbers that you see on screen. Well, so is on-prem or SaaS for you, right? And I don't want to missell anything. In fact, I would rather see, advise you to consider this really closely, right? SaaS is not always the best way to go if there are multiple considerations to keep in mind. And you can look at this decision tree that we're showing you, but let me boil it down to specifically 3 factors, right? The cost of adoption, the availability of your own in-house resources, and the access that your systems need to have across the org. I think those are the 3 factors that will dictate whether you should, consider an on-prem solution or a SaaS-based solution when you're considering, DevOps and DevSecOps in solutions, right? If your cost of adoption is high, it's too much to take right up front, SaaS is the way to go. But if it isn't, well, on-prem might just be the right thing to do. If you have an in-house team that can take on a lot of the maintenance load, hey, I need to audit, the entire infra. I need to do it every quarter. I need to pull out a report that needs to go up to my CISO that will then need to get signed off on. And if I have the resources to do all of that in-house, on-prem is the way to go. If not, consider SaaS, right? And to maintain all of these systems. And of course, access to your systems, right? These are the systems and infrastructure that that is going to enable your business to go forward. And if these systems are being accessed across locations, it's not easy to then look at it from an on-prem perspective. DevOps using a SaaS approach might be the way to go there in that case, right? So consider this, and again, decide whether actually on-prem makes sense more than SaaS. Well, with all that, what is Chef SaaS, right? So Chef SaaS is a cloud service, and it provides policy as code that helps you define infra and compliance policies for the entire enterprise that you have. It also enables large IT fleets to be securely configured rapidly, in order to meet your regulatory requirements on a fairly consistent basis, right? So multiple challenges being addressed just because of the SaaS offering that we have. And of course, I very briefly breezed through this. All of this gets you better collaboration. It's easier to use. It of course offers you an increased flexibility and efficiency, not just to your broader teams across the enterprise, but to your DevOps, DevSecOps, and IT teams, that actually use this on a daily basis. It's faster to deploy for obvious reasons, and of course can be managed on any device anywhere, right? So that's the typically a good set of things to look at when you're considering a solution like this. With that said, there are a couple of questions that we have on, and you'll see the first poll question pop up. Do take the time to respond to that, and we'll discuss some of these answers at the end of the webinar. And while you do that, I just wanted to very quickly call your attention to this Chef Conf that's being held or by Chef next month, actually in September, from 11th to 14th. You have attendees across the globe, and you can see a bunch of names that we've had on in the last edition, and it's going to be exciting, probably more exciting than last year this time. There are a bunch of in-person benefits. You're going to be able to network with a bunch of people. You meet leadership from Chef, the products guys from Chef. We'll be able to give you a little bit of sense of what the roadmap looks like, what to expect, and of course, hey, Boston. Do I need to sell it more than that, right? So with that said, this is the link in case you're interested to go to and register. Do so now, and you'll probably get be able to reserve your tickets sooner rather than later. They're going fast. So with that said, I'll hand it off to Mark to take this forward and get into the details of what Chef SaaS is. Mark?
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'll get my screen sharing, and then we'll get started here. Thanks everyone for attending. My name is Mark Cavens, product manager here for Chef in the Cloud. So today, the things that we'll be taking a look at, we'll be looking at where we came from with Chef SaaS, where we're going with Chef SaaS, the different types of versions of Chef SaaS that we will have for our early access. We'll look at additional timelines of what the future will look like for Chef in the Cloud. And then we'll do a quick demo, just showing what the day in the life of how do you get started with Chef SaaS, and then how do you work with the SaaS offering that we have. And then finally, we'll take a look at next steps and how you might be able to start looking at Chef SaaS now and in the future. So our timelines. So when we started with our SaaS offering, we first started as a beta. We started going into beta back in August of 2021. We had a few customers that we went with a focus with for a couple of months, just seeing how things were going, getting some questions answered that customers had with what would Chef look like hosting in the cloud. We also took a look inside of January 2022 as a second offering of that beta program to make sure that we looked at deployments at scale, and we focused again on addressing some of those customer questions that we saw in the first half of the beta. Our beta recently ended back in March of 2022. And out of there, we took a few learnings from what that beta gave to us. We know that there are some things that were inside of the beta, and then some of the things that may still not be addressed in early access that would allow us to go completely at scale for our customers. And looking at that, some of the biggest things that we looked at, especially on early access, is what do we look at that competitive pricing. We wanted to make sure that security concerns were addressed. We saw that a lot of, there is a perception that security from cloud to on-premise is not necessarily where it needs to be right now. And we've addressed some of those concerns. Some of those concerns will still pop up. There are some systems that should probably never be outside of your data center. Now, again, we don't know what the future will hold, but looking at some of these issues, we've addressed some of those. We also started hearing a lot from people around, well, how do I start to purchase Chef? I have a big cloud spend today, and I do a lot in either my Azure portal or my AWS portal. How do I take advantage of Chef in that particular way? One thing that I do want to call out are our marketplace offerings that we have for Chef today. And those that can use your existing AWS or your existing Azure spend and be able to purchase license of Chef using that way. So one of the things that we see out of there is we see faster procurement and then that easier deployment with Chef SaaS. So in combination of those things, please talk to your account reps. We have a bunch of different offerings for how do we make this easier for you to get started, and also take a look at maybe some of that budget that's coming that you still have for your clouds today, and that you may not use by the end of the year, and think about Chef SaaS and think about Chef while you're doing that as well. What is Chef SaaS Early Access? Sudeep went into this a little bit. This is a limited release. It's not limited functionality. It's limited to a certain number of customers that we're building this out to. These are full production environments that allow you to look at everything that Chef has, but doing it in a cloud-based release. So whether that be endpoint security, automation, compliance, anything that you're taking a look at for Chef today, but you don't want to host that, this is definitely something for you to take a look at. This is definitely something for you to evaluate while you're looking at things. Now, I do want to put out that we have had in the past, we have already done Chef hosted in the cloud. That was called Hosted Chef. There's a little bit of a difference between what we would have in Hosted Chef today and what we have for what we're moving forward with, which is the Chef SaaS. So in addition to infrastructure automation, again, we have the compliance automation. We have desktop security. We also have that cloud security posture management that was recently talked about as well. So using cloud to help secure cloud and to help make sure that the security posture of those cloud-based environments are all taken care of. Having those upgrades, updates and everything handled by Chef, all of these allow you to do what you need to do to get the job done and not think about the infrastructure that you have to build in order to get to that point. So who's best fit? For what we're taking a look for Chef SaaS Early Access, customers that are wanting to be digital or cloud first are definitely going to start falling into that matrix. People that want to take a look at Chef and get Chef up and running, but don't necessarily have the time or the budget to get that going and allow us to move things forward. One thing I do want to point out is there at the bottom, we do have a couple of things that because of early access, we do want to point out. If you're needing to do either a migration from your on-premises to the cloud, or you're trying to move from our existing hosted Chef to the cloud, one of the things we're not necessarily doing in this early adopters is trying to move that historical data from hosted Chef or on-premise up into the cloud. So just be aware of that as you're taking a look at your use cases and what it is that you guys are trying to do. Now, I did mention that we do have two different versions of what we're doing for Chef in the cloud, and they meet two different specific use cases. So our non-high availability version of Chef SaaS Early Access is looking for those customers that are, right around that 8,000 node or less of a deployment. What this means is we can offer you that same scale between, basically 100 to 8,000 nodes. And for you, that will meet more than enough. And we allow you that pricing that will be reflective of that particular type of deployment that you would need. Now, we do have customers that go beyond that 8,000 node. And so with there, we will need to scale up the infrastructure that we're hosting the environments on. So with that, this allows you to go beyond that kind of 8,000 node limit. It allows you to really kind of, test what it is and work with what you need to get your deployments up to where you need them to be. So timeline, moving away from March 2022, when we ended our beta program, starting in April, we started qualifying a lot of our early access customers. Here at the beginning of Q3, we've started that onboarding process for some of our early adopters. If you would like to come out to Chef Comp, you'll see me again talking about Chef SaaS and some of our other cloud-based offerings that we have today. And that'll be continued what we're looking at in September. And then going to the end of 2022, when we're kind of getting to the end of the early access side of things and starting to focus on the GA product. Now, I do want to point out during this timeline, anybody who is signing up for the early access, those environments will be carried over into our final product. So there's no need for you to worry about having to do any kind of migration or anything like that. What you would sign up today for would be exactly what you would see, plus more as we move into the future. All right, we'll do a quick demo of what it would look like to get started with our environments. And it's pretty simple. What we're requiring is about 5 or 6 pieces of information today. Those pieces of information are who's the primary admin that's going to be on there, what's their email and contact area, what's your preferred Amazon location that you'll be in there. Of course, if you're on the East Coast, you probably want a node on the East Coast. But again, it may depend on what your business needs and what your requirements have. From there, it's pretty simple. Once we have that information, we do the setup. It's pretty simple for us. It's about a 2 command line type of setup process for us, and that will help to create your environment. Once your environment is created, we'll pass on the credentials for getting logged on and signed into the environment. And then from there, you can get started with doing things like hooking up your workstation to the different servers that you'll need to. And then, of course, getting your nodes attached to the actual Chef SaaS at that time. So pretty simple as far as getting an environment created. You can see here, we're actually creating the URL that you would sign into. And then we'll give you those first logins. And from there, you can manage your users, your organizations, everything that you need to do to really get started with Chef SaaS. Moving beyond there, what do you do with Chef SaaS? Well, a lot of what you would be doing today, if you're an existing customer, if you're a new customer, again, you're going to be focusing on getting your server set up. You're going to be looking at, are those servers in compliance? Being able to use compliance scanning to take a look at if there are any errors and what those errors might be. Also taking a look at if there are missing CVs or there's anything that's going on that you might need to do to get your infrastructure into compliance and making sure that everything is up and running well. In addition to Chef SaaS, in addition to the monitoring that we're doing on the back end to make sure that the environments are up, everything's stable, we do, for early access, provide you a monitoring system as well. For some of the other cloud-based offerings like Hosted Chef, you can go to status.chef.io. With what we're doing with SaaS early access, you actually have your own individual monitoring where you can see, hey, here's everything that's been going on between a 4-hour period, a 24-hour period, and so on and so forth. And if there's any type of error areas where you might see a failure or anything coming through, you would be able to know what was going on at that point in time. So we'll do our last poll of the day, and then we'll talk about next steps and what it is that we're looking for from you. So pulling up. What do we want? What do we want from you? Really, what we're really looking at here is the next steps. If this is something that you're interested in, we'd like you to talk to your account rep. Get in and we can do a kickoff session with you. We can talk about your use cases. We can make sure that everything kind of aligns for what we're looking at for the Chef SaaS early access. And if the use cases align and everything goes on, then we move on to the next step, which is providing the environment and then allowing you to review that environment. And because it is early access, we'd also periodically schedule some kind of review phase, making sure that everything's up and running for you, keeping everything up and active, and making sure that we get the best possible outcomes as we move forward with the product. One last plug before we get to questions is don't forget to try and sign up for Chef Conf. If you're not sick of hearing my voice today, we've got 3 more days of it here coming in September. So I invite everyone to come on out and see what it is that we've got going. And with that, we can actually get to the questions, the question side of things at this time. And I'll move my question. Yeah.
Great. So I think there are a bunch of questions, Mark. I think the first one is there a more technical breakdown of HA versus non-HA in the context of SaaS? And, would you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, if we want to talk, the baseline of the HA versus the non-HA is just that scalability to go beyond, the typical, if you're thinking about an on-premises server, typically our on-premises servers handle between about anywhere between 8 to 10,000 nodes. And essentially that is the non-HA that we are setting up for hosting today. Our high availability allows you to scale beyond 10, 20, 30,000 nodes, and allows us to build the infrastructure based upon your needs. At this point in time for early access, what I will say is there isn't auto scaling. So it is something that we are still manually monitoring. And if we start to see the number of nodes, and I do see another question that says, can you define the number of nodes? A node at this point in time is either a virtual machine or a server that you are managing with Chef today. So if you're looking at, you've got 30,000 VMs going into there, we can scale that up to make sure that those 30,000 nodes are constantly communicating and that you have the ability to run scans on all 30,000 of those nodes at once if you were trying to do that. Now, again, that's probably a little bit of an extreme case. But that's, again, that difference between the number of virtual machines and servers that you're hosting today.
Great. The other ones, so there are a bunch of other questions as well. What is the price for SaaS? That's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the price per SaaS is set up by the individual by looking at the customers. So again, work with your account reps. Your account reps will come up based upon the needs that you have. So whether that is just a generic version of the Chef SaaS, and then from there, if we need to add in like CSPM or we need to add in custom content, all of that's going to eventually bring up the larger parts of the price. But we have different measures based upon what it is that you'll need inside of there. And again, talk to your account rep. They'll be able to get you that pricing and what it looks like. Now, the pricing that we will set for the early access will be lower than what we will eventually have for the general availability product that we'll be releasing later on into next year.
Great. The next one is what is the price? So when will the GA for SaaS be? Do we have a sense of when that is?
Yeah, our goal out of the GA is, inside of the first or second quarter of 2023. We're still evaluating that based upon what we're doing with the early access. So depending on the features and sets that our customers may come back with during the early access might affect that timeline a little bit. But again, we have a desired set of functionality that we're looking at to get to what we would say is that everyone could take advantage of SaaS as opposed to where we're at now.
Sure. The next question was, hey, can we use custom content with SaaS and the SaaS deployment? That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely you can. So in addition to the content that you're creating, the content that we've already created out there, the content coming from Supermarket, everything can be used inside of the SaaS today.
Great. How long does it how long does it take to set up an environment for early access?
Yeah, typically once we have everything filled out for paperwork, it takes us about 24 hours. So we're not at a point of doing a auto account creation at this point. We are having our engineers spin that up, and a lot of that is just going through doing the double checking and the testing that by the time the environment gets into your hand, everything is up and running like you would expect.
Great, great. Thanks, Mark. I think with that, let's just quickly take a look at the poll question, and I think it just in terms of this is probably a proxy dipstick, you know, and if you can please share the responses to the first poll question, that will be great. And we asked, hey, do you have nodes in the cloud today? And a majority of individuals said yes. That's about the breakup is about 75% that said, you know what, we've got cloud-based nodes and we're doing it today. I think that kind of backs up what we're seeing in terms of adoption from our immediate customers, and also I think a problem that we can solve with SaaS. Mark, what do you think?
I think we definitely can for those folks.
Great. Done. I think that's it. I just want to make sure that we are not missing out any questions. Okay, we have one more. Can Chef SaaS be hosted in your environment or in the customer's cloud accounts as well? Interesting, but do you want to, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, so today we are hosting them in a separate AWS instance that we are hosting and we are controlling. Now, can you host Chef inside of your own like EC2 instance, or there? Absolutely, you can. This is not something that then Chef would be in control of. That would be something that then at that point in time, you're deploying that inside of your cloud. But the versions that you would deploy inside of your cloud is essentially what we're deploying for Chef SaaS today. So absolutely, they can be deployed inside of your own infrastructure as well. And then again, how you would pay for that, and how you would look at that with our engagements, that's where you might take a look at your marketplace offerings as well. This is why we bring up the marketplace, because again, if you're having that AWS or that Azure spend, and that Azure, that AWS spend needs to be allocated in some way, shape, or form. Again, think about Chef. And then what we do with the marketplace is you buy those licenses, and then you use them to deploy however you see fit. If you want to go with Chef SaaS, love to talk to you a little bit more about that. If you need to do on-premise as well, our Chef account reps and our sales associates as well can help you out with that as well. And I'll be in on the back end of those talks as well, because basically I help to move a lot of our products forward in the cloud. So you would probably still hear something from me, just maybe not necessarily for this particular platform that we're talking about today.
Great. And while you were saying that, just to all our participants, I left a link in the chat interface that'll give you a sense of how you can get access to it, to the early access program as well, right? So make sure that you leave us your details, and we'll reach out to you in response. But Mark, there are quite a few questions, and I think the central theme around most of those questions is, hey, SaaS is great. It's definitely going to give us a lot of advantages, but we're not really. Is it how easy or how safe, for a lack of a better word, is it to have our data outside of our on-prem servers? I think the concern around data safety and security, especially in a SaaS deployment, I think is something that's coming through.
Yeah, and again, each company has to take a look at what does that mean about the data security, the data that you're wanting to put on the cloud, and the data that you don't want to put into the cloud. And I think for each individual customer, because I can't give a blanket response, because we might be talking about card data. We might be talking about individual customer names. Now, again, we're not capturing that particular data. We're capturing the response of your server. We're capturing the status of your server and looking at that. So if that data is behind the firewall, the only thing that we're looking at is are you configuring the server correctly, or the VM correctly, or whatever it may be that you're looking at? And is that configuration in compliance with your security team's recommendations? So when you take a look at it from there, the communication and what information is set over is relatively benign when you're taking a look at it from a security point of view. But everybody has different rules. And so what may work for one company may not work for the other.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Well, I just want to make sure, again, let me just check that we're answered questions. There are a few more, but I think most of them were answered in the past. So I think that's that. One more. Have there been any additional security mechanisms in addition to validator.pem that have been implemented when enrolling a node? Would you provide a pen test information if any has been done?
No, at this time, again, what we're doing with the on-premise is what we're doing in the cloud. So we haven't done any additional validations at this time. This is something that we're looking at as we get closer to the GA, and also making sure that things like SOC 2 compliance, GDPR, all of those certificates and validations are posted as well. So all of that is stuff that we are looking at into the future. And as you consider if early access doesn't make sense for you from those security perspectives, please let us know. We'd love to hear more about it so that we can make sure that as we run out with everything else, that those are taken into account.
Great. And Johnny, thank you for that question. Good to have you on the webinar as well. But we hope we've answered that. Great. I don't think we have any more questions today, Mark. But to the participants, in case you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll definitely respond to them offline, perhaps via email, if you can give us your contact details. I've also, again, just to remind you on two things. One is we've dropped links to how you can enroll to the early access program, via form. And of course, ChefConf is upon us. So tickets are going fast. If you're going to be able, you really want to make yourself available there for some good networking, getting a sense of what's in store, more from a broader technology perspective and from Chef's perspective, good place to be at, right? So do register at the earliest. With that, thank you all for your time. And